Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast, and today marks the start of a brand new analysis series, probably the one that you guys have been waiting for some time, and that is the casting of Frank Stone. Now, just as a couple of things to mention before we get going, I have finished the game. You probably realise this, guys, because I have put both of my playthrough parts up on YouTube now, and you can go and watch them before you come to this analysis if you want. But this series, it's obviously the opportunity for me and Liam to go back and forth how our playthroughs went, what we thought on certain things, and give our overall thoughts on the game, really. He's still halfway through at this point. I believe he's at the start of chapter 6, so he doesn't know all there is to know. To be honest, I don't either, really, but I will share that when we get to the end of it. So, mate, obviously we're going to We're going to start off with chapter 1. Classic supermassive intro, some live, some die, and then it cuts to a character called Augustine Lieber. Now, obviously, we've seen that you've played the prologue already because Behaviour Interactive gave us a brilliant opportunity to play it, but one other thing I was going to ask is Augustine Lieber someone that's already established in Dead by Daylight, or is this a completely new character?
No, so the entity is established. So obviously at the very end of the prologue, you'll see like the claws, in the furnace chamber. But Augustine Lieber, I don't think she is a Dead by Daylight character, but I believe she's like a servant for the entity, hence why she's trying to find a ruthless killer character, which is her role in this.
Right, okay. Right, cool. But we then cut on, and you know what? One point I will add, and this goes sort of throughout the game really, but here I'm referring to like the very intro to the casting of Frank Stone. It starts off, obviously you've got the POV as Merlin the dog, and it did like subtly remind me of like how the opening of The Quarry started, where you've got the POV of as like the werewolf like running through the woods as like the car travels down the road. And I really like that. And just as a quick comment on that is that I think this game does really well at like subtle hints at other supermassive games. Whereas a criticism of The Quarry was that it was a bit too on the nose in its reference to Until Dawn. I think this game does it slightly better. But mate, let's crack on. Obviously it starts, we meet Sam Green, who's obviously like a on the beat cop, and he's investigating at the steel mill the missing child, and we meet a character called Tom. Tell me how the scene went down, mate. Like, did you do the same choices as before in the prologue, or how did it go?
You know what, I did, because I was pretty satisfied with how I played it in the demo that we were given. So I just stuck with the same. I had a good relationship with Tom throughout the whole thing. He trusted me. He went back to the cop car to help out. So yeah, I didn't do too much differently, mate. So yeah, how about yourself?
Different for me. So whether this means anything to you, but these are the ones I picked. So it went from serious to sceptical to questioning to surprised. Now, ultimately at the end, I did ask him like to be supportive, and he did run off, when like you're at the gate. But no, like it felt kind of frosty, and I feel like that I even said this in the stream. It felt like that there was something missed there. Like I saw the drink, you got the shot of like the drink in the desk, and it does give you an opportunity to bring it up, and I didn't. I swear I remember watching something in your prologue where you get to like see a clue, or you get to like see something else in Tom's. Is it like a book or like some sort of manual? But I didn't get that at all in the prologue at all. It was just some frosty words, a bit of probing and questioning. And then the next thing you know, he's like, right, okay, I'm going to go out and have a little look around.
Yeah, I always do that thing where when there's an option left or right, and then it presents a third one that you can almost unlock, I'm always like, well, I'm going to pick that one because I feel like I've earned that, perhaps. So yeah, I did get some extra bits of dialogue, which was pretty cool. You
know what, as well, as a little DBD Easter egg as well, when before Sam goes in, he like flashes his badge to Tom through the window, and it says like 424. which I suppose if you look at the letters of the alphabet, that is literally DBD. So it's like a nice little subtle reference there. I must admit I didn't spot that myself. I did find that from elsewhere on the internet. But mate, we move on and he starts to walk around the yard of the steel mill. And we've got this new feature called Plunderer's Instinct. Now for me, I thought that this was an optional thing. So at first I was wandering around trying not to use it. But in the end, I got the impression that you had to use it, because whenever I did, it sends out like this red sort of pulse radar, and you then get to find like where these trinkets are located. But I guess what's your take on it? Did you sort of quite like this addition to help finding collectibles in the game?
Yeah, like the DBD fan in me loved the reference to Dead by Daylight. It's interesting actually because there's so much DBD that is referenced in, but I imagine, and this would be an interesting question for you at a later date, mate, whether you felt excluded by it, but I don't think it really does. Like, they're kind of subtle enough where newcomers can still enjoy the game. But no, it's really interesting because there is a genuine perk called Plunderer's Instinct where that comes from Detective Tap in the Saw chapter, where you can find where the chests are if you want items. You get the auras pop up, and it literally looked like the same. Admittedly, those are in white, these ones are in red. But yeah, like, really handy. I thought it was going to be something that only came with Deluxe Edition. Maybe it's because I pre-ordered it, but yeah, I have the game in Standard, and I still had this. And it's an odd one, because yeah, part of me is like, I kind of want to go and find things myself. Because I think I found everything in the prologue on the beta. But still though, like, whenever it gave me the option, I didn't mind the hint, like, okay, because a lot of the clues we will find out, it's like, okay, it's all the way up there, we're telling you where it is, but you don't know how to get there. Sometimes it was piss easy, sometimes it was a mission, but I quite like that. So yeah, no, I was all for this Plunderer's Instinct little gadget, mate.
Good stuff. You know what, and while we're talking about the collectibles, I've got another comment as well. And that is obviously is something new that Supermassive have done, in that, you know, the collectibles or like the things that you find, they've got like a white glow around the edge as opposed to like a white ball to indicate that there's an object there. And come the end of the game, I think overall I was fine with it. However, I do think there was a couple of times where the lighting didn't really help it. Not necessarily like right at the beginning here, but there was instances in the game, and that's another thing I should mention, by the way, is that I had this icon in the bottom right corner because I was going live, which meant that I couldn't see what button you had to press at a certain time. It was blocking it. But basically, sometimes the glow, it would be very apparent. Other times, I struggled to see it. So, like, jumping to the end a minute, I did do quite well for the collectibles. Like, I got the vast majority of them. But there was times where I felt a little bit lucky. I was like, damn, like I really did not see a glow around the edge there. So a part of me, if there's one thing from this sort of new things that they've implemented in the game, if there's one thing I'd probably like them to revert back to, it's for them to like bring the white sort of circle back as to where like a thing to pick up and investigate is. I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really like the auras. I feel it's one of those ones where it's almost impossible to get it perfect, because I do recall instances in Until Dawn, for example, where like the white glow would be masked by the snow if you're outside, and you know sometimes it'd be difficult to see a totem. So yeah, like I just honestly like the fact they've tried something different. You know, like, I always say that I don't want these games to be carbon copies of one another. I really want them to break out, have their own identities, and I thought the auras were a surefire way to kind of, yeah, set it apart from its predecessors.
That is one of the things. I feel like it's worthy of a separate video, whether like, because obviously they're very heavy on the fact that it's Plunderer's Instinct, it's a reference to DBD, but I am curious as to whether Supermassive will consider bringing what they've implemented into Frank Stone into their future games as just like a natural evolution from what they've done before. You know what, as well, while we're talking about the trinkets, obviously, you know, I don't really know anything about DBD, but what are these trinkets? Are they just like representations of like the killers or something?
Yeah, so each killer has like a bunch of perks and a bunch of like different weapons. Like, for example, one character called the Huntress. Later, you'll see her like rabbit hair mask in the Curiosity Shop if you were fortunate enough to find it. And she throws hatchets at her villains, so she's like the long range killer. She has an add-on called Iridescent Head, where she can like knock people down in one rather than two. So like, they're all like add-ons of their weapons, I would say. It's probably the most simple way to describe that one. But yeah, no, really cool, because it probably doesn't exclude yourself, but it is just like really awesome nuggets for us DBD fans.
You know what? Because like, I was finding, I mean, you probably know this already, but you'll find out more so throughout the game. But like, whenever I found one of these boxes, because you can open up one of these red boxes and you can see what trinkets you've already collected, and there's like holes for the other ones that you've missed. So whenever I run into one of these boxes, I was thinking, oh damn, I must have missed a trinket that's nearby. But as you go on, you'll learn that there's actually way more of these boxes than there are trinkets, and come the end, I actually got like the vast majority of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that did throw me for a little bit, because I was thinking, God damn it, like I've somehow missed it.
No, I do get that, because there were later points where I would miss them and then I would go back, and then I think like the third one or something I would get way later. I'm like, okay, I haven't missed it. It's funny though, because I always commented on how Grantham Dumay follows you everywhere you go in like The Devil in Me. But in this game, it's the red boxes. Like,
Yeah.
I know, like, you know, it's a game and continuity doesn't have to be airtight, but I do find it funny how you pick these things up, you put it in your pocket, then you go to, like, the other side of the room and it's magically in the box already. And then, like, you'll go to the next room and the box has followed you in there. But, you know, I'm willing to look past that one.
Yeah, and you know what? We should also mention as well, but you just mentioned The Devil in Me there, but they've also brought forward, mate, you know, the jumping, the vaulting, the shimmying, and obviously we don't necessarily see it in this chapter, but the balancing as well. Is it a happy return of those mechanics for you in the game?
Yeah, big time. We noted like how, say, in House of Ashes there were a lot of like long scenes where you're just walking endlessly through tunnels, and they really could have done with the sprint mechanic. They added it in The Devil in Me. Does very well. It's what we were crying out for quite a while. And for me, Until Dawn is like kind of like the paramount game. That is the game you want to beat, right? If you're Supermassive Games beating a project, that is their best game. And to me, like, I haven't, you know, completed the game yet, but doing features like that is a good way to kind of at least challenge it, because Until Dawn lacked that. It's quite a slow-paced game where you have to walk around a lot. But yeah, this game, you used it really well, going over balance beams, crawling under tight spaces, sprinting. So yeah, no, such a welcome feature, mate. I want every Supermassive game to have that feature.
And actually, even as the game goes on, there's a lot of dependence on it, those mechanics, because in certain puzzles and things you get to use them, even when you're just exploring in like places that feel like they're a maze, especially like when you get underground, it feels like it's a damn maze, and you can vault and you can go down, and there's lots going on there. But obviously we move on. We then vault into the window and we're looking around the warehouse. I thought there was quite a nice little Easter egg here, where you pick up this bit of paper and it had Friday the 13th circled, which of course is a nice horror reference. But then I suppose skipping forward, mate, we then run into Tom again, and we ultimately find the dog and a pile of guts with an ear. Is a bit for me where it actually did make me laugh a little bit, because you know how I mentioned they had like a frosty relationship. It was basically that you got this choice. I think Tom says to you, oh, do you think it's the missing kid, you know, when you sort of show him the ear? And then I chose something and he goes, oh Tom, all of your guesses have been way off base so far. And it just, I don't know, it just completely took me by surprise as to like how frosty this relationship was. Did you get that at all in your playthrough?
Yeah, I did actually. I mean, I had a great relationship with him, but I still said it. So, like, I think that thing's fine. I feel like at the end of the day, he is a drunk on the job, and he has been forging documents, you know, for sign-ins and stuff. So, yeah, like, it's one of those ones where grilling the guy every now and then doesn't do a bit of harm.
Yeah, because obviously this is a blind playthrough at it, so at this bit, it's sort of like really you want to find out all the little nooks and crannies of like the different dialogue, and I just wondered whether because I had a frosty relationship with him, like whether that had an impact on the dialogue there. But gonna take another quick pause actually, because it was at this point where I really got to explore the menu, and it's going to be another positive. I really like, I don't know, because obviously you're pretty, a big fan of like the Until Dawn menu, mate. I'm quite a big fan of like this Casting of Frank Stone one as well. I just love the concept of like when you hit pause and you've got like the film reel going down the side, and that's like each of the sections are like the collectibles that you can, accrue throughout the game. It just felt like really well put together. Dare I say, I probably, from what I can remember of like the Quarries one, maybe better than the Quarry because of the way it just, the way everything fit on the page, it just looked a little bit more crisp and neat to me.
Yeah, like Until Dawn is my favourite menu because it introduced the relationship bars. I love the thing with like the faces where you can see like their injuries on their faces, their emotions, everything from that. Frank Stone almost like brings it back and more because yeah, like you say, it's personalised. While Until Dawn's authentic, Frank Stone's personalised. You have all the good bits of Until Dawn, but yeah, you've got the movie reels. They've done like relics, but it's spelt like killers backwards or whatever. So like, yeah, there's just like, they could have easily given us like a standard menu, but they didn't. They really chose to go all out, and every little nook and cranny has this like personalised detail. So yeah, no, I absolutely love the menu.
Even like the audio in the menu, like when you first boot up the game, but I think it's the same when you just pause it as well. For a minute, I felt like that my headphones like weren't plugged in properly because it was making like this sort of like glitchy noise, or like there was bees whizzing around or something. I was thinking, is that my headphones not working properly, or is that the game? And it was only after a time that I was like, wait, no, that's actually the game. That's really smart, really clever. So they just, again, it shows like the attention to detail, which I really like. And even on top of that, while we're talking about visuals for a minute, I've got to say that the game looks superb. I think obviously the sort of the environments that you're in are really, really strong graphically. I've got a comment on the facial animations as well. I think it's been one of my sort of, biggest criticisms of like the Supermassive games in the past, more so the DPAs. But it just doesn't feel very authentic. The characters, it looks like they've not got any souls behind the eyes, and the movements in the face look awkward at times. I think on the whole, this game, whether it had a bigger budget or whether it's because of the engine and the mocap, I think that looks really strong in its own right as well. So we then move on from there. We managed to find a little bit of equipment to a crowbar, I think it was the crowbar, wasn't it, to then get the gate open. And then we head down, mate, into what I can only describe as a maze. I was really taken by this because I feel like in these games at times it can feel very obvious what the linear path is. I don't know about you, but I was sort of, because we're both people that like to explore and find every little area to, potentially get a clue or anything like that. I was like down in this area for a little while. I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, I was, and yeah, like really good in terms of just finding collectibles everywhere. Even if it was just like, like a blank space on the wall where there's like scribbles or whatever. Yeah, really good. And in terms of the location of this place, I really like the mill as a horror location. I like my horror locations to feel individual, unique, something a little outside the box that I've not really seen before. And don't get me wrong, there's probably loads of horror films out there with mills. I've not seen too many of them, and I know it is very reminiscent of like the Trapper's map in Dead by Daylight, for those who do play that game. But I don't know, like going down these sort of mines and like the tunnels and stuff, it felt really unique. I hadn't really seen anything like that. While I think maybe a game like The Quarry struggles, where it's just kind of like your classic 80s Camp Crystal Lake, where it just felt like a rip-off of every Friday the 13th location ever. This game just brought us this really unique setting that I really bought into. And I just really bought into the horror of it. Like, I wasn't, like, overly scared, but there was an eeriness to going around each tunnel and opening every door in case something jumped at me. So, yeah, no, massive thumbs up for me on that.
I completely agree. And this is the first instance where we start to collect These little dolls, mate. I mean, are these again like little dolls of like killers from DBD?
Yeah, they are the killers. So the first one that we find that you're alluding to is the hillbilly. I'm not going to go too much into the detail, but yeah, he is basically, I guess, kind of like if you've seen the Wrong Turn horror films, a bit of a rip-off from, you know, something like that, where you've got a really disfigured man who, like, you know, runs around with his chainsaw. He is a horrible killer to go up against. I hate playing against him. And yeah, he's the first one you see. So it's just like really epic as a DBD fan to see what kind of like plushy like relics you're gonna find, like, you know, every location you go to. So yeah, I absolutely love this. But yeah, like obviously, like I said, it probably will be a separate video where I really go to town on it, mate. But as a non-DBD fan, do you sort of pick those up and think, oh wow, a collectible, that's pretty cool? Or do you just pick it up like, I don't understand this is excluding me?
No, I mean, obviously, I know that it's all about DBD, so I picked it up and I was like, oh, okay, this is clearly referring to a killer. And I do sort of sit there thinking that this probably has zero bearing on the plot, and therefore it's literally just serving as like a little collectible item. So I was pretty much okay with these. It's more about other clues, whereby, because I'm not familiar with DBD lore, I wasn't sure, is this a reference to DBD? Is this a reference to the story? Is this a reference for another Supermassive game? So there was perhaps elements like later in the game where I was picking something up and going, oh, I really don't know what that's about. It could be DBD, it could be anything. So, but as far as the little dolls things go, no, I was absolutely fine sort of picking them up and just putting them back down, you know?
Yeah, and I guess it's a way for you to kind of learn a bit about the game as well. So it's not exactly exclusive, it's almost like, you know, tutorial, isn't it? And as we go through this analysis series, guys, there will be a few examples. I'm not going to hit all of them, but where I will point out a few DBD Easter eggs here and there that Jack, you know, wouldn't have known. So yeah, like I will try and pick up as many as we go throughout the series as well.
Good stuff. And you know what? While we're speaking of DBD, mate, we have an introduction of a certain QTE, which is taken from DBD, the skill check. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I love it because it's something that doesn't exclude you. It's a quick time event, which, like, obviously in Until Dawn we have like the QTEs and we have the Don't Breathe segments. The Quarry does something similar. This game here, like, brings in the QTEs, which I really like because, you know, like if something is about to drop on your head, you have to react fast, so you have to be alert. But yeah, like it's just a nice little mini game that anyone can really join in on, you know. They're not massively difficult to do, but if you're not paying attention, they will punish you. So yeah, no, I absolutely really like it. And just again, the DBD fan in me just loves that it's littered in all these little references like that.
And you know what? Like, I like it as well. For me, it just feels like a standard QTE, to be honest. I know it is a reference to DBD, but you know, it's quite obvious, the little ticker thing, you got to get it in between the gap. I quite like the fact as well that there is an option for you to somehow get like a bonus, or like if you get it, I got it a couple of times throughout the game, but not too many times. You got to get it like in like the white window, and then that means that you've performed the QTE perfectly, sort of thing. I think it perhaps becomes more important later in the game, maybe when you're fixing a generator, which of course is another DBD reference, isn't it?
Yeah, because
like how far along you get in terms of like repairing it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So like you'll see the exact generator later on in chapter 5, but those generators are scattered throughout the maps, and you need to like complete 5 of them to unlock the doors to escape. Now, yeah, like if you land in good, you know, you basically like don't blow up the generator, because if you fail the quick time event, the generator explodes and it freezes it for a few seconds, and it alerts the killer where you are, so the killer can come after you. So like getting good just means you continue your progress and you've done the skill check. But if you hit great, it will advance the progress bar a little bit. So yeah, like landing in those greats are like, yeah, like very good basically.
Okay, so obviously we then leave the sort of sewer downstairs undergroundy bit. We come up the ladder and we're then in the furnace. Completely new environment, very red and you know, very intimidating as well. And it's where we get our first shot of Frank Stone himself. To my shame, I've got to admit, I say there is one bit where there's like a bit of falling debris, and I actually screwed up the QTE, but obviously because it's, you know, it's early days, it thankfully didn't matter that much. I just had to spam a button and get myself out of there. But as far as it went down for me, mate, probably the same for yourself. You get into a bit of a tussle with Frank Stone. You've got some QTEs, which, you know, I did pass them. He then ultimately hooks you anyway, but then you can unhook yourself, and then you've got an opportunity to shoot him. You do so, and then I saved the baby. Was it the exact same for you?
Yeah, I did. I did it in the beta. I thought, yeah, I had a good start. I want to keep the same. I was tempted to see what happens if you fail it, but yeah, I thought I'd, save the baby again. But yeah, Sam Green, what a hero. I sure hope he gets the credit for that one, and the Sheriff doesn't steal the limelight on that one.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing as well, is that, you know what, you were saying there about like what happens if you fail the QTEs. To be honest, I think I've seen what happens if you fail the QTEs, and the only difference is that the cot gets thrown into the furnace. I still think you have to kill Frank Stone in order for the plot to move along anyway. So again, I feel like chapter 1 is very much like a tutorial, setting the player up in terms of the QTEs, the different mechanics that they've got, in order to just get them ready for the rest of the game, really. But I did make a prediction in this opening chapter, because you hear the baby screaming, but you never actually see the baby. So I was sort of thinking to myself, is there actually a baby? Could this somehow be a trap? But then I did sort of think to myself, like, or, you know, would Supermassive want to, you know, show a baby in a cot, and then ultimately for that cot to get thrown in a furnace? Even that might be a bit too dark for them, you know. But it was a prediction that I made. But guys, you know, we'll have to see, if you've not finished the game, whether that prediction holds any legs whatsoever. We then see a shot of Augustine sort of overlooking the whole thing, and then that wraps up chapter 1, mate. So unless you've got anything else to add on that particular bit, we'll rock on to chapter 2.
Yeah, I'm good for chapter 2, mate.
Sweet as. So chapter 2, again, I'm just going to have to comment, I absolutely love the title cards. And you know what? Again, I feel like this is worthy of its own video. But as a quick pointer from me, I was wondering whether there was going to be a narrator in this game. But actually, I don't think it needs it. I know you could argue that Augustine Lieber is a sort of a narrator, because at points she does sort of intervene and talk to the player. But damn, I just love these title cards, you know, so that when it cuts to black and then it just opens up to a new chapter, I really wasn't that bothered about it cutting to someone else and having a bit of back and forth. Don't know about yourself, mate.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, obviously, I've not completed the game yet, but for me, it's just about the plot and whether a narrator can play a role for that plot. Dr. Hill, spot on. The curator obviously sets the gaps, and there is this whole underlying thing with the DPA games. Eliza, a little shoehorn, but she still has a role in the plot. If they was just to stick a narrator in there for the sake of following a formula, I think I would dislike that. So yeah, no, I'm with you completely, mate.
Sweet as. So obviously, yeah, chapter 2 opens up and we're introduced to a character called Madison, who, well, she wakes up from a nightmare, but it's quite apparent that she's still experiencing a nightmare of sorts. And it's somewhat like, well, it's how I describe it. It's almost like PT, mate. It's sort of like the repeating corridors thing. Everything's a little bit dark, a little bit edgy. And one detail that I really liked is how each time the rotation repeated, you could like pick up the same picture, and it was like a picture of Madison and her mum. But like the mum's face would be like scratched out each time, and I just thought that was sort of a nice detail to show that you are progressing, but it's also like quite dark as well. Then we do ultimately go outside, and we're then confronted by this television.
One thing I want to quickly touch on before, mate, is that I just a little bit of a DBD thing for you there, mate. I watched a little bit of your stream. I've kind of skipped through it a little bit, and then when you go outside, there's all this red stuff in the background, and I think you say something like, "What is all this red stuff? Am I being watched or something?" Yeah. So that again is another Dead by Daylight thing. So basically, the killer seeing survivors as they chase them. If a killer sprints, they leave scratch marks, so the killers have to be sneaky. They have to try and walk where they can. Obviously, the killer can catch up too easy if you're walking, so you have to gamble with when you pull the trigger on sprinting or not. But yeah, it leaves these red scratch marks around. So the moment she left and then red scratch marks were following her, I was like, ah, that is cool. Because even like, you know, it doesn't exclude you as a non-DBD fan, because just in terms of visuals, it looks really cool how like Maddie is just covered in this red glow going through this dark forest, and she kind of lights up the forest with this red light. I absolutely love the visual. Like, already this game is playing with all these lighting techniques that I'm just a massive fan of. So yeah, just big thumbs up again for.
And the audio as well. I know I mentioned the soundtrack in the previous part, but like in this particular part where it's like a nightmare sequence, the music is like really high pitched, and then there'll be some deep tones, and it works really, really well. Like, the way they managed to set the tone for each scene that you're playing was superb, and I'm really glad, because after The Quarry, which, you know, I really rated what they did with The Quarry, with some of like the sometimes more serious tones, sometimes more sort of fun, light-hearted tones. I think they got it, you know, pretty spot on there. I think that they've managed to do the same thing here. I think they've managed to really gel the audio and the visuals together like really well. And then after that, after seeing her mum get catapulted off up into the sky, she then wakes up again and she's on a plane. It then cuts to her driving in a car, and we come to our first choice, mate, in this particular bit. There's a hitchhiker in the road, and you can choose to either pull up, you know, let them in, or you can choose to drive straight on. So what did you do? What did you do in that situation?
So the thing is, I stopped for this lady. Reason being is that I've seen her in the trailer footage, so I knew she was going to be a main character. So I did it as to not burn bridges. Also because the game was super early, that I just strongly doubted it was going to kill me off, you know, by picking her up super early. So those are the two reasons why I picked her up. Had I not seen trailers and had this choice came in Chapter 7, I probably would have gone on, you know, and avoided her. But because, yeah, like, it was early days and I had seen this character in trailers, I did decide to stop for her. How about yourself?
It's a good point. I also stopped for her as well. And you know what, I think you're so right, because I do feel like if that was later in the game, I don't think I would have done. I think I'd have just carried on. But we've just had an intense prologue, or chapter 1 I should say. It's unlikely that they're going to hit you with something again. So I was like, okay, this is just going to be... But the thing is, I got to admit, when I did first pull up, like, obviously we can just call her Linda, right? Because she gets introduced as Linda. She did seem a little bit off, like, before she got in the car, and I was like, oh, blimey, like, I've just stopped for you. Like, why are you not, you know, being a bit more grateful? But I've got to admit, once you get in and you start talking, you know, they talk about where they're from and the fact that, you know, she makes films and stuff like that. There's a bit of back and forth. I thought, okay, this is going well, and actually, like, the relationship bar did go up. There's a little side note on that. Early Doors again, I really liked just the dialogue and the performances of the characters. Again, it felt very authentic. It felt very genuine. Whereas, again, if I'm coming back to DPA, there are times in DPA where it can feel a little bit stilted and not all sort of put together very well. But so far, like, the characters, the world building, the relationships, I'm like buying into them very early.
Yeah, I agree. Like, because, yeah, obviously Linda a little bit off, a little bit cold, you know, and I just thought, oh, they're going to go down that classic character trope where the slightly older lady who looks a bit more professional and has a tidy short haircut is going to be a bitch. But she softens up, like, and the relationship progresses. And yeah, and Maddie's really quirky as well. One thing that I dislike, and I think my biggest fear factor for this game, is that we'd have bland characters, because Supermassive games have made them, particularly DPA. I think there's just a lot of forgettable characters that Supermassive games produces. So far, every character fills out a purpose from what I've seen. And yeah, no, I'm a massive fan of them. The dialogues, like you mentioned, the way they like bounce off each other, the way they lore build for each character, the way that their performances are. Yeah, I'm really sold, mate, by the performances in this game.
Yeah, same here. And even jumping forward a bit, even when they go to meet Stan, you know, when they go into Garant Manor and they meet Stan, you really get a flavour for who he is straight away, just by like the way he looks, the way he talks. He seems like, I don't know, like a posh wheeler dealer type. You know, you feel like that he could con you any minute, but he's also like putting on the charm and stuff. Again, like really sort of good character development, and just the way they were back and forth with one another, I really, really liked it. And also as well, just another separate point is that I like the fact, because obviously we'll get into the fact that there's two timelines. I really like the fact that there are some more mature characters in this game, because I think we've perhaps got used to teen horror quite a bit in like these blockbusters, you know, being Until Dawn and The Quarry. I love the fact that the casting of Frank Stone stands on its own 2 feet, but you do still get a bit of that in like the 1980s timeline. You jump forward to 2024 and you've got, you know, more adult-like figures in there with their own drama going on. It just serves as sort of a nice variety from what we've seen previously.
Yeah, no, big time. And just the fact that each timeline like kind of links, and we'll learn about that later, but it's all like interwoven really intricately. And yeah, I'm all for it, mate.
But going back a little bit, mate, I've got to comment on Garant Manor, because obviously we turn up and we go straight in. I love the lighting in this place. It's almost got that blue tint that Until Dawn had when you're walking round, because obviously it's night time. It's like very, very old-fashioned, very ornate, very neat and proper. And it's for some reason, it somewhat reminded me of Cole's Mansion from like Detroit Become Human. And I don't know. I know that it's a super massive game, but like this one location, it almost took me out like that this could have been a Quantic Dream game. Just like even like the spaces that you go around, it didn't feel linear. There was corridors that went off. So many times you're going back on yourself because you're thinking, oh, is it going to progress the game here, or can I go down there and open this door and look for a clue? There's like just lots to explore in, you know, the areas that they do put you in, and I personally love that.
Yeah, it reminded me very much of like the Spencer Mansion in Resident Evil, because you always have to walk by these windows, and the kind of like trauma childhood who played horror games as a kid is almost scared to like walk by a window in case like a dog's gonna jump out at me. But yeah, no, I really like the location as well. And yeah, the antiques that are everywhere really kind of like builds into the theme they're going for, and like the host of the whole evening. So yeah, no, massively, same here.
There is a thing as well, I did want to bring your attention to it, because I have looked at the achievements for this game since, but did you go upstairs in the manor, and in one of the rooms there's a piano? And I wanted to ask you, like, if you did see it, was you able to play it at all?
I wasn't able to play it, I could only look at it. Why, is there something there?
That's interesting, because there is actually an achievement on there where you can play the piano. I don't know if it's on about that piano or whether there's like another piano in the game. So I wanted to ask you that, because obviously, like I said before, I had that icon in the bottom right corner which blocked like the sort of the little indicators as to, you know, what button to press to do what sort of thing. So I don't know if it had anything, you know, hit B to play the piano or something like that, but I don't know. When I ultimately go back, I'll have to go and see. But another thing in that room is that Iba has clearly got rid of all the workers in order to welcome your presence. So we know that she's probably a baddie already, right? But again, it sets up Liba quite nicely as like the antagonist of this plot, and she's not someone to be trusted.
I was going to say as well, and yeah, like the fact that she's invited all these people from different walks of life into one location, and it almost just looks like fodder, doesn't it? So yeah, the hairs on my arms stood up, you know, knowing that like something bad was about to go down, and obviously the fact it is a horror game, of course.
Yeah, again, very like reminiscent of the Devil in Me, of like getting people to come to a remote location for various reasons or whatever. But we do get to meet Liebe, don't we, mate, in that room, and there is a choice here where she offers you a drink. Did you take that offer?
I rejected it, probably because I remember what happened in Heavy Rain with the surgeon. So yeah, and also I just didn't think it was Maddie's character as well. There was kind of two reasons. I felt like maybe like a bit younger. I wasn't sure if she was quite 21 yet, which is like obviously the legal drinking age in America. But I just was like, you know what? I don't think if Maddie was to have a drink, I don't think it would be a cold hard whiskey. So yeah, I rejected the drink. How about you?
I also rejected the drink. I think mostly for my logic, although the Heavy Rain did come to me afterwards, was that I just thought Liebe's not to be trusted. I've literally just met these other two people. If something goes down, do you know what I mean? I've only got myself to blame. So I was like, nah, you know what? But I was very conscious thereafter of like somehow going to impact my relationship with her or the other characters around me. But I think I got away with it because I don't think it come up with any like relationship bars or something like that. You know what? I can't remember if I mentioned this, mate, but I'm actually therefore very curious. If you just drive past Linda, how on earth she gets to the manor?
Yeah, like I reckon she probably gets there at a later stage, and her relationship with you probably goes down, I imagine. But yeah, no, like I can't wait to do a second playthrough. And guys, I will do a chaotic playthrough that you'll all be able to see.
So of course it seems like the reason that Liebe has brought us all together is to collect these films of Murder Mill, because there is a part, isn't there, where you pull this panel open, you see a poster of Murder Mill, and it's established that Linda is the person that directed it in the background, and you know Stan has like oh my god, it's like a celeb moment. But yeah, I don't know if you've got any theories, mate, as to why she's wanting these reels of film from all these people.
Nah, like I didn't at this moment, but I did in the next chapter when we get to the Curiosity Shop. But one thing I do want to comment on is it did actually make me like Linda more, the fact that she didn't announce that she was this massive big celebrity. And I think she appreciated the fact that like Maddie like was a bit unaware and a bit innocent, so she could just get to be a human being. So yeah, like it made me like their relationship a bit more as well. But yeah, no, in terms of the theories for what's happening, yeah, I didn't really have a solid thing around, yeah, why they were selling it to Augustine.
That's true. Whenever I looked on the menu, it gave the impression that Linda wanted to escape her past anyway from like what went down, so she really didn't want to bring it up. But obviously there's a bit of like an awkward situation between all three of them because none of them disclosed why they were there. Like, did they? They all had a bit of film that they were coming to give to Augustine, but they didn't announce it, which, you know, to be fair, is expected. They don't know one another. They don't have to. But it just, you know, I think it sets the plot up nicely, and I think it sort of says, okay, what's this Augustine up to? We know she's all about Frank Stone, but she's also here in the present day as well, trying to get the film reels off of the characters there as well. So yeah, it certainly had me hooked early doors. I do have one question for you as well, mate, from what you, I mean, you suppose it could be a kind of what you've played so far, but especially these early scenes is what I noticed the most. Did you feel like at any point that the cutscenes were going on a little bit too long and that you weren't playing the game enough?
You know what? Not really, because I felt I was invested in the characters enough where I wanted to hear what they had to say. While I've probably felt that way in DPA games, like I'm thinking Man of Medan on like the boat when you're between scuba diving, I was like falling asleep with a lot of it. But this one, I don't know, the characters were very quirky. Even Stan, who I mistrusted, I really enjoyed his line deliveries. So yeah, I don't know, I was all for it. Yeah, how about yourself?
I've got to admit, like, I think I'm in the same camp. because there was points where I was sat there and I was like, oh, this cutscene's gone on for a while. All we've really done is like make the odd dialogue choice. But for some reason, I was just like really invested that I didn't mind so much. I feel like for me, this is a comment for more the opening half of the game. I think in the latter half of the game, it's far more hands-on. You're doing puzzles, you're doing exploring and stuff. But while you're getting this sort of exposition, the story's being developed, it is slightly more cutscene heavy. But yeah, I think, you know, obviously I hope they take it as a positive. It's not a criticism at all, but I was quite happy to watch the cutscenes. It might seem like an odd point because they are interactive movies. I just felt like what I'd got used to from Supermassive Games, that it was just something a little bit different, you know, in comparison to their old titles. Obviously, Liebe then takes off, and we then cut from Garrett Manor and we go back to the 1980s timeline, where clearly the gang are making they're shooting a scene for their film and the camera's focused on Harmony. I don't think the choice really matters per se. I can't quite remember what I did. I think he acted his socks off. He did really well. And then they just sort of were exchanging, oh, the blood gag didn't work and this and that. And I think I ultimately sided with Chris, though, because she was the director. And I was saying to Linda, like, come on, like, you've got to respect, you know, the hierarchy. You've got to respect the fact that she is the director and you've got to sort of follow her line on things. But have you got any sort of comments on this scene, mate, you know, before Sheriff Green waltzes in?
Not really. I guess just to kind of maybe differentiate, I actually sided with Linda. I don't know why. I just felt maybe it's like clearly Jaime and Chris were a couple, and it was like, you know what, I don't want to exclude Linda here. Let's, you know, like kind of like she is the established character already, because like, yeah, as we clock on, Linda is the one from the timeline. So we already have someone who's going to have plot armor, which we knew would happen. We knew there was going to be a plot armor character to carry this film through to the next timeline. So I guess Linda is that person. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to side with Linda here, just to kind of, I don't know, just curiosity, to be honest, just to see what happened. But I'm not going to lie, in the moment, I do think Chris is right, though, because, like, if you had that really cool gadget with, like, a hand that can squirt blood, you have to show that, Linda. Why are you zooming in on the guy's face?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But then obviously Sheriff Green comes in because they're obviously at the mill and he's saying, you know, you can't be here because he completely knows of what's gone down previously. He doesn't think it's safe. He essentially tells them to bugger off. I think in terms of the choice for me, because the camera does break, doesn't it? I think I said something like it was frustrated, I think was what it said, and Harmy turned around and went, oh, but what are we supposed to do, you know, with a broken camera? And he just turns around and goes, oh, you just got to go get another one down at the old curiosity shop or drugstore or something like that. And then the characters get into some like deadbeat van. It's like the Scooby-Doo van if it was like absolutely battered. And then drive off, mate. And then that concludes Chapter 2 of the casting of Frank Stone. Is there any points that you wanted to raise across either chapter that we maybe haven't covered yet?
Yeah, I guess two little bullet points. One is that one thing I forgot to bring up is that when you go around locations, I love the fact that you have to hold the button if you want to progress the scene, and it's clear as day. Oh yeah, you'll stop exploring this room if you progress through this. Yes. I love it when games do it, because as the collectible fans that we are, it is the most demoralizing thing where you accidentally open a door by chance and it advances the scene. The amount of games I can name where that's happened to me, and I just feel so deflated that I've probably missed a bunch of clues because the game wasn't clear. And I love the fact that this one's like, oh, hold, that means yeah, you're going to advance. So yeah, like, did you feel the same?
Oh, 100%. Because, you know, I was talking earlier about, like, how some of these locations are quite big. Like, even in, like, Chapter 1, where you've got, like, the maze-like bit underground. In, like, sort of, with all the drains and all the, you know, underneath the furnace. Even though I was sort of semi-getting lost and thinking, oh, you know, there's a lot to cover here, I was confident in the knowledge that because of that hold A feature, that I ultimately wouldn't be missing anything out. It was the exact same in like Geraint Manor as well, because you could go between the stairs, you could go up the stairs. There was like lots of doors and things that you could ultimately go in to look at stuff. I was like, okay, so if I did ever find the point where I knew it had progressed the game, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to remember where that is and ultimately go and check everywhere else first. So you're absolutely right. For collectible, junkies like ourselves, it's such a good feature.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is back to Sam Green as an adult. I guess I tried to make peace with him because I was like, we've played as him in the prologue. He's clearly a good guy who clearly like wants these guys out the mill because he's looking out for them. You see it with horror tropes a lot where you'll have like the old man that tells them to scram, and then like you think, oh, he's a meanie, but then later on, you learn his backstory. And I quite like the fact that this game made you start as him. He's the first guy you play as, and then you see him again and he's being quite mean, but for good reasons, which is why I kind of made peace with him, or tried to as much as I could. Some of the dialogues don't really help you sometimes, and it's like mean option A or mean option B. But yeah, I don't know, I just quite liked seeing Sam as an adult, and it was just really refreshing to sort of, like talk to him and see him again. And also, I think I was nice to him as well, because I am aware through looking at the trailers that we will later join up with his son, so I didn't want to burn bridges with the Green family too much.
Absolutely, and it comes back to the point I said before. It's great that we're not exclusively playing as teenagers, because you get to play as characters that you ultimately interact with, but we're also interacting with, people that can cross timelines and more mature characters as well. Yeah, like when coming across Sam, I was like sort of perfectly understandable, and I think that reflected in like the dialogue choices that I made. Obviously, we know that the plot's going to take us to a point where we're going to go back to the mill anyway, but nonetheless, I didn't want to burn bridges with the guy because, he made perfect sense of what he was saying. So yeah, there we go, guys. Obviously, that was the analysis for chapters 1 and 2 of the casting of Frank Stone. Do let us know what your sort of thoughts were on these opening 2 chapters, maybe your choices. If there was something different from what me and Liam mentioned, maybe someone out there didn't pick the Hitchhiker up and you can tell us what goes down there. Do tell us in the comment section below. Do keep an eye out, because we're going to be doing a large analysis series on the casting of Frank Stone, and we're going to be doing discussion videos throughout as well. So definitely stay tuned. Have you got anything else to add, mate?
Nah, lad. Just see you guys in the next one, to be honest.
Okay, guys, thanks for joining. See you in the next one.